Today we're going to do the Veroscope of Commissioner Michael Cox's November 2025 statement, and this is following the letter that was written by Alan Jackson, I believe, to the mayor. And Alan Jackson has stated that the Boston Police Commissioner Michael Cox has been caught in a lie, and not a small one, Jackson writes. And of course, this all pertains to Officer Kelly, forever known as Deva and not Diva, who on the witness stand in the Karen retrial, and if you're new to the Karen retrial, this is Karen, and the attorney to the right is Alan Jackson. And this is the Commissioner Michael Cox, whose statement we're going to be analysing today. So Michael Cox, we've already done an analysis of his first interview where he denies ever saying what he said or saying what Deva claims he said in their meeting together. But this is a different analysis entirely. So let's go through the actual case context. And by the way, what we're going to find at the end of this forensic linguistic analysis of Michael Cox's new statement is, in my opinion, a linguistic conclusion that Commissioner Michael Cox's November 2025 statement represents complete forensic capitulation. We're going to find 47 deception indicators in July statement, which you've already seen on the Veroscope channel, and we're going to see 23 indicators combined with total what I call flight behavior in this latest November statement, which is only a paragraph long, by the way. Let's quickly have a look at what he says. He says, "What I need is to not be asked this question ever again pertaining." Do you remember this word pertaining in the Beverly Hills Cop film? He says, "What I need is not to be asked this question ever again pertaining to anything to do with the police department." What a strange sentence. To add a little bit of levity, we're going to quickly play this scene for 10 seconds. Listen to this.
Friend, my name is Serge, and how can I help you?
Yeah, I'm looking for Miss Jenny Summers.
It's very busy today. Maybe you give me your name?
My name's Axel Foley.
And what it's pertaining?
I didn't understand what you said.
Pertaining, what it's meaning, regarding.
Oh, what's it regarding? I'm an old acquaintance of hers.
Danae?
So there's the Beverly Hills Cop. But we're not dealing with the Beverly Hills Cop. We're dealing with the police commissioner himself, Michael Cox, who also uses the word pertaining. It's a very strange sentence. He then goes on to say, "My condolences to the O'Keefe family for what they've gone through." And we're going to analyze this sentence because we did lose a department member. We're going to analyze this in detail, but straight off the bat, we can see that it's very soft, passive language. And unfortunately, police officer John O'Keefe, who this is all about, let's remember, this is about justice for John O'Keefe. Unfortunately, John has been reduced in this statement to a lost department member, not a murdered police officer, not a fallen officer, not an officer down, not someone who's been killed. Instead, we did lose a department member. Can you see how psychologically this is far weaker? Inside Michael Cox's mind, he is minimizing. He then goes on to say, but outside of that, isn't this interesting? But outside of that, this has nothing to do with us. How he can say this, I just do not believe. We're going to really analyze this part of the sentence. This has nothing to do with us. Notice that he starts with what I need. Oh, and by the way, in forensic linguistics and statement analysis, the priority of order, what the subject that we're analyzing, in this case, Commissioner Cox, what's his priority in his statement? His priority is what I need. But then towards the middle of the sentence, we notice I becomes we, and then finally us. And we call this hiding in the crowd. But then he switches at the very end. And I am not going to speak on this again. Some sermonizing at the end. So he's not going to speak on the lost department member, which really is a murdered, fallen police officer. The whole statement, this single paragraph, we're going to forensically analyze it and pick it apart and find out what we can discover within it to try and understand what's going on in Cox's mind. So, let's continue with the analysis. The because catastrophe. Here we have highlighted, when we mark up a statement, by the way, if you're new to statement analysis, we mark up in different colors so that the statement is easier to see where the patterns are. So we have a highest level of sensitivity. The word because marks the most crucial moment in this statement. When the brain pauses its natural flow to explain why something happened, when no explanation was requested by us, it signals extreme sensitivity. Cox is explaining why he's offering condolences to the O'Keefe family, and this is unnecessary. So let's go through what I need is to not be asked. Let's go through this in a little bit more detail. Why shouldn't he be asked? He's the commissioner. Why should we be concerned what he needs when he's the one who is allegedly influencing Officer Devers' statement in the murder of John O'Keefe? Why is his interest suddenly superior to that? That's what we really need to ask. What I need. It's very strange. Don't you think? Cox's brain, think about it. What I need. This is not the language of a police commissioner being concerned about what he calls a lost department. Where's John? Is he sort of round the corner or something? He's not lost. He's not. We did lose a department member. No, this is very soft, very passive. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So what I need and why this matters, people use question formats when they're working something out in their mind. So Michael Cox is working out in his mind what to say. What I need is not to be asked this question ever again, pertaining to anything to do with the police department. Can you see how strange that is? He's processing in real time. He's not really speaking from prepared truth. His brain is literally asking itself, what do I need? And answering live. We also look at how this sentence is constructed. There's a negativity to it. There's different negatives. Is to not be asked. So not, it's the implied infinitive structure. The entire sentence is about stopping something. So it becomes cognitive overload for him. In effect, his brain is fighting itself. What I need is not to be asked this question ever again. Be asked. Let's look at this. What I need is not to be asked. So that, in effect, is removing Cox from agency. You see, if he was strong, if he wasn't surrendering, if he was fighting Alan Jackson's statement, if he was defending himself, if he was denying that he influenced Dever in the murder trial, he might say, I won't answer these questions. But instead, he's very passive. He's very weak. And he says, what I need is not to be asked. Can you see? When we analyze it, it's childish almost. What I need is not to be asked. And so this is why we slow down in statement analysis. You might notice in some of the Veroscope videos, because there's so much to analyze in somebody's trial when they're on the witness stand, if we went at this speed, their cross-examination would take weeks. But because we have the ability to analyze Commissioner Cox's paragraph, we can. It's a good way to show you just how much can be found using forensic linguistics in a very short number of words. What I need is not to be asked this question ever again. So be asked is passive. Cox needs others to stop doing something to him. So inside his mind, if we were to get into rapport, if we were to get into linguistic rapport with Cox, he's victim positioning. He's making himself a target. What I need is not to be asked this question ever again. So he's becoming the victim and the target inside his mind. And also, he doesn't specifically mention which question or which questions. It's just, what I need is not to be asked this question ever again. And then he tells us slightly, pertaining, Beverly Hill Cop style, to anything to do with the police department. This is the commissioner of police. And yet now, he's not to be asked anything ever again pertaining to anything to do with the police department. So it's singular vague. It's a singular vague referent. Which question? There are multiple. Did you meet with Dever? Did you tell her do the right thing? Did you receive the FBI email? Why does your calendar show the meeting? Why did you lie in July, according to Jackson? So he's deliberately vague, and he's grouping all of the allegations, all of them, into pertaining to anything to do with the police department. Can you see that? And then look at this, ever again. So what does he mean? He says again, which when we analyze again, obviously we have to say he's admitting that he's already been asked, and we know because we can go back and watch the video. Boston 25. I think the excellent reporter really put him on the spot, didn't he? Do you remember that video? We'll play it again perhaps later. And then we have Jackson's letter. So has he been asked many times privately and internally, or just by the Boston 25 reporter? But he's saying it must not be asked ever again. So how many times has it been asked? And which questions have been asked? His brain leaked that this is not a new topic for him at all, because ever again tells us that it's not. So just this one sentence so far has given us so much, hasn't it? And then we have the pertaining to anything to do with. And it's, I don't know where he got this word in his head from. It certainly wasn't Beverly Hills Cop. Or maybe it was. Maybe he watched that film so many times that it's in his head. But it's excessive linguistic pattern, and the principle is it's breaking the economy, the linguistic economy. It's therefore unnecessary language. It's padding, and it's excessive linguistic padding. It's also formal and distancing, and anything is vague. It's extremely broad, isn't it? To do with is also extremely vague. So we've got to anything, to do, and then this extremely vague thing becomes the enormous thing, the police department. So nothing to do with the police department ever again. And this question isn't identified because we've got lots of questions. And also, we notice that he is the commissioner of the police, and yet it's not my police department. It becomes the distancing the article replaces the pronoun. So we would note that. Not my department or Boston Police Department or our department. It becomes the police department. So the distancing is enormous just in this one sentence. He's psychologically separating himself from the institution that he leads. It's disassociating his own command. The sentence structure in itself, and don't forget, we've only just started this analysis, the sentence structure is a need statement. What I need. And it reveals Cox's actual priority. It's not what I want to clarify. It's not what the truth is. It's not let me be clear. It's a very weak, childlike, almost call for sympathy. What I need. It's his priority. His priority is what he needs, not the truth, not justice, not accountability, just his personal need for the questions to stop. So, a highly unusual start. He then goes on to say, my condolences to the O'Keefe family for what they've gone through. So it's possessive. It's my condolences. It's not, I'm sorry for your loss. It's not, my heart goes out to the family. It's not, this is the worst tragedy for our police department and the family. My condolences is distant and formal, ritualistic And it's the language of obligation, not emotion. It's what you might write in a card if you didn't really know the person that well, perhaps. It's obligation. It's not what you say when you're genuinely moved. So he's performing sympathy, not feeling it. And combined with what he needs being his absolute priority to then jump to the performance, and also we notice it's to the O'Keefe family. There's no, the O'Keefe family has my deepest sympathy. I can't imagine what John's parents or parent has been going through. To is directional. It's like sending a message. He's directing sympathy at them. He's not expressing connection with them. It's transactional language. It's not empathetic language. Empathetic, rather, sorry. And it's not John's family, is it? It's the O'Keefe family. He doesn't use his own officer's name. John is being minimized in this statement. He's using bureaucratic family unit designation. It's not John's loved ones or John's mother, Peggy. It's the O'Keefe family. So this matches his earlier distancing. And also here, a department member. John isn't a department member. He's a fallen police officer. He's not a staff member in that sense. So Commissioner Cox is minimizing John. But outside of that, now he's done this bit. He said what he needs as his priority. He's done the obligation. He's minimized John, and then says, but outside of that, this has nothing to do with us. Hiding in the crowd, and I am not going to speak on this again. You mean you're not going to speak on sympathy for John or John's family? No. He says what they've gone through. So that's a third person plural. That's maximum distance. It's not what you're going through. So he's not talking to them. He's not talking to the family. He's talking about the family to a third party. This is the language of people, of someone rather. This is the language of someone discussing people. It's not giving sympathy. And how do we know that? Because he selected in his unconscious mind the word they've. Do you see? So in statement analysis, we have to actively listen and really look at what their unconscious mind has selected. He also says gone through. Do you notice that? Gone through. So this is not suffered or lost, suffering, tragedy. No. It becomes minimized again. Gone through. So in effect, we've got the complete absence of John as well. There's no name. John's name isn't mentioned here. There's no acknowledgement of how he died. He doesn't connect John to the relationship, your son, your brother. There's no reference to him as a person at all. And this is all about John. This is all about justice for John. The victim has been completely erased in the statement. And this context makes it unusual, because let's remember what this is really about. This is about Officer Dever, the witness tampering allegations in the Sallyport with the broken taillights and the possible framing of Karen Reid with the planting of evidence. This is about false public statements. This is about documentary evidence contradicting his claims. This is about demands for the Brady list placement by Jackson. And his response to what it's really about, with John being number one on that list, is what he needs, some obligation to the O'Keefe family for what they've gone through, and that he's never talking about it ever again. Also, a for. We haven't discussed the word for yet. I wonder what he means by for. It's distant. It's vague. Its referent is unclear. It's transactional. Do you see? Okay, well, let's move on, because otherwise, for those who aren't into forensic linguistics, this might be going into too much depth. Let's move on and look at the next part of the analysis. So, the pronoun catastrophe, the guilt diffusion. Cox opens with the personal pronoun I, what I need, establishing his individual priority. But when addressing the allegation, he shifts to plural pronouns. So we note the I, what I need, is the way he started. And then in statement analysis, we look for shifts in pronouns and what they mean and what they tell us. So the I becomes, we did lose a department member and this has nothing to do with us. So let's quickly analyze that. The pronoun shift from the singular I to the plural we / us is a classic pattern of guilt diffusion. We look for patterns in statement analysis. And so here we have the classic I, we, us pattern. Spreading responsibility across the entire department to create the lost in the crowd deflection that we will typically see in deception. It's the linguistic equivalent of a child saying, well, everyone was doing it, Mum. It's the lost in the crowd excuse. Pattern recognition. Remember Patsy Ramsey and her infamous 911 call? By the way, if you haven't subscribed to the Veroscope channel or watched any of the other videos, do go and check out the infamous 911 call, which we've analysed. She says, we have a kidnapping. Highly unusual linguistics. So she's hiding in the crowd. What isn't said is sometimes as important as what is. So we have lots of missing details from Commissioner Cox. What he does not say. He does not say, I did not meet with Officer Dever about her testimony. Doesn't say that. Doesn't say, I did not receive the FBI email naming Deva. Deva, not Deva. No, Deva. Forever Deva. That's how I remember, not Deva. I did not tell her to do the right thing. Jackson's allegations are false. Doesn't say that, does he? Jackson has written a strong letter. Cox is not denying it. He's just saying, what I need is please don't ask me any questions. It's ridiculous. Okay. The principle is clear. People tell the truth and are deceptive in what they withhold. Cox has withheld all the denials. When faced with specific documentary evidence, the FBI email, for instance, and the calendar entry, an innocent person provides context, explanation, or direct denial. Cox does none of this. Instead, he demands silence from you. And so this is deception by omission. And the most damning form, because it reveals he cannot construct even a tortured denial when faced with written proof. So the analysis, order and priority. What comes first reveals truth. Where a statement begins reveals the subject's actual priority. So we're going through some principles here. Where a statement begins reveals the subject's actual priority. Cox's statement priority structure. First priority. What I need is not to be asked this question ever again. So stopping questions is his priority. From the police commissioner, who has a priority of stopping questions, that is obviously wrong. Second priority. My condolences to the O'Keefe family. Victim sympathy deflection. And you've heard my analysis. Incongruent. And never mentioned denying the allegations. Complete absence. The forensic truth. A person falsely accused prioritizes denial and context. A guilty person prioritizes making the question stop. Cox reveals his priority. And it's not clearing his name. It's ending the conversation permanently. That's his priority. Ending the conversation permanently. So, analysis. The power of negative. Cox states, this has nothing to do with us. This is strong, emphatic negatives often reveal the opposite truth. When Cox says he has done nothing to do, this has nothing rather to do with Boston Police Department, the very force of this negative statement betrays what his brain knows, that this has everything to do with the Boston Police Department. To say that this has nothing to do with us, a fallen, murdered police officer, is quite incredible. So, the impossibilities. For Cox to claim Boston Police Department has nothing to do with this case, and yet John O'Keefe was a Boston police officer. John O'Keefe died on property owned by another Boston police officer, Brian Albert. Multiple Boston police officers were present that night. Kelly Dever was a Boston police officer during testimony. Cox personally received FBI briefing explicitly naming Dever. Cox's calendar shows meeting with Dever the next day. So for the police commissioner to claim, strangely, that has nothing to do with us is forensically absurd. The vague language, concealing actions. Cox uses the vague verb do twice, pertaining to my meeting with Deva, pertaining to her testimony. He doesn't say, so he's linguistically camouflaging using the word do. And there is sermon-esque language in his statement. There's some unnecessary virtue signaling as well. And the use of the word but following the condolences. Well, we all know, when we hear the word but immediately following something, everybody knows that it weakens what they said before. We have distancing language, department member. John has become a department member. He doesn't say Officer O'Keefe. He doesn't say John O'Keefe. He doesn't say our officer. He doesn't say fallen officer. He doesn't say my officer. John becomes a department member. In fact, John's name is never mentioned. And neither is any of the family's names ever mentioned. Department member is bureaucratic and impersonal and incongruent with the statement. It's extreme distancing language. It's passive, as I said. It's not murdered. It's not killed. Psychological distance, not only from John, but the entire case. So the interview termination, we have flight behavior. I am not going to speak on this again. This is interview termination. It's the psychological equivalent of a suspect standing up and walking out during questioning. It's textbook flight behavior. Innocent parties want to clear their name. Guilty parties need the questions to stop. He declares permanent conversational shutdown. And we have plenty of missing information. He doesn't talk about anything to do with Deva, the calendar, his previous statements, Jackson's letter. It's all ignored. So if you have time, you can read through some of these deception indicators, which I've gone through. Unnecessary information, structural deception in the language, behavioral indicators, the language of concealment, the sensitivity words, because, nothing, massive time gaps, the pronoun violations, high levels of sensitivity markers in a very short statement, only 50-something words. So his linguistic collapse, for those who have seen the Boston 25 video, he says, I have nothing to do with Karen Reed. I didn't know she was even associated with that case. I never had said, unusual, isn't it? I never had said those words together. So in that pattern, we had attempted deception, attempted justification, and then finally we have complete capitulation and, in effect, walking out of the interview. And that's how we came to our forensic linguistic conclusion that Cox has essentially given up. He's not prepared to enter into discourse and discuss the accusations which Jackson has presented to him. And of course, the FBI will no doubt be speaking with Deva again. And as we know, there's just too much evidence with too many witnesses, the vast majority of whom were not involved in the murder, that don't necessarily want to find themselves involved in a federal conspiracy charge, and the federal government have got lots of tools which they can bring to bear in terms of charges, with 20-year minimum sentences for those involved in any form of conspiracy. People are going to tell the truth. The real question is who's going to tell the truth first, and how quickly the FBI are going to act. So that brings us to the end of today's analysis of Commissioner Michael Cox, and I look forward to speak to you in the comments.